Welcome to Driven by Dreamz. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Jasmine LeFlore, aerospace engineer, nonprofit founder, and a true force for change in STEM. Jasmine is the co-founder and executive director of Greater Than Tech, a nonprofit that empowers young girls and underserved students by bridging STEM and business education. She also serves as Advanced Technology Solutions Lead at Collins Aerospace, where she's been a champion for innovation and diversity. Beyond her professional achievements, Jasmine has delivered a powerful TEDx talk on the concept of the Unresume, challenging how we view talent and achievement. Let's dive in. Hi, Jasmine. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, Anishka. Thanks for having me. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm excited.
So, before we dive deep, let's start with a quick round of rapid fire to get to know you a bit better.
hmm
Would you rather build something from scratch or improve something that already exists?
Ooh, it depends on what it is, but first mine goes to build something from scratch.
What's a skill you have that most people would never guess?
I am I'm going to say a human jukebox. I feel like I know most songs and good at knowing, being able to hear a sample of where a song originated from.
Favorite city you've traveled to?
Ah, Probably gotta say like Phuket, Thailand.
Book or podcast that's inspired you recently?
I'm really into Mel Robbins' Let Them theory.
What was your dream job as a kid?
Becoming an aerospace engineer.
One word your friends would use to describe you?
Uh, Probably an enigma.
Your go-to productivity hack?
Productivity.
hmm
Probably setting a timer, like doing a Pomodoro technique.
If you could have dinner with one innovator, who would it be?
I think I'm gonna go with Jules Solomon Burke.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, let's dive into your journey as an entrepreneur. So, could you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So I always talk about how growing up for me, entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing more than it being like a curse word for you don't have a real job. And I didn't really think about entrepreneurship until maybe my second or third year of being an engineer. That was the dream job. And when I got that dream job, I started seeing more about how business or innovation or entrepreneurship could have helped me earlier on in my adolescence to see technology as more of something I could create more than just learning how to use it, if that makes sense. So it kind of started with becoming an engineer. I did a startup competition with my co-founder, who is also an engineer, and we had this idea for a sensor business. It basically was to help women get away from attackers. Like, imagine having a sensor on the back of your purse or book bag that kind of was like eyes in the back of your head. And we got pretty far with it, and that was the first time we realized that as technical people, engineers, we could innovate something that could be for a force for good. So that was the aha moment for me. And at the time, I was also doing the MBA program at Indiana University, and it was a dual degree with Purdue University. So I was also thinking about just business in general. Entrepreneurship became something I started getting excited about probably my second or third year as an engineer, and that's what was the inspiration or part of the story of the inspiration for Greater Than Tech.
I've heard there's two sides to entrepreneurship, the creative side and the logistics side. So, as engineers, you probably had the logistics side covered. How did you get that creativity side? Was it harder for you?
So I always think of engineers as naturally creative people. In a lot of ways, engineering is centered around design, but we have ways in which we problem solve or use different methods and tools to design. So creativity is kind of like a part of the equation, no pun intended. And I think the creative side of just developing something is what inspired me to even do Greater Than Tech, or found it. I was creating a curriculum and pretty much looking at the things I already knew about STEM and outreach to students. And at the time, like I said, doing my MBA program, so I was also creating elements from what I was learning in grad school and how a 12-year-old kid could like understand that concept. So I think the creative part is actually kind of embedded or easy. Logistics, I mean, I think engineers definitely tend to kind of follow the rules and, go by the books and understand requirements very well. So, um, yeah, the logistics part is kind of like, we know how to do it, but we're not excited about it. At least engineering.
Can you share more about Greater Than Tech, what your guys' purpose is?
Yeah, so Greater Than Tech is a nonprofit organization. We teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and entrepreneurship to middle and high school underserved youth. Our original mission was to serve girls, and particularly girls of color. As Dr. Brady and I, we were robotics instructors for a middle school girls team, and we found that the girls of color who didn't have parents who were entrepreneurs, engineers, scientists, they didn't necessarily have the background to be excited about robotics. So there was competitions that we had to prepare them for, but we didn't have the capacity to get all the girls kind of at the same level of understanding to be successful in the competition and everyone felt good about it. So it felt like there needed to be something centered around them. I call them first timers in tech, kids who may not have done STEM or have STEM readily accessible in their home or in their school. So that was kind of like where we started, and it was around how can we still do STEM and maybe do robotics, but it's more about producing a solution that could serve their community more than competing with other kids just to build, a robot or something. And I think there are really good fundamentals with that, but it's more about like, let's reimagine what technology can do.
I have a lot of friends that I know that when they go to robotics classes, the majority is boys and they feel overwhelmed. And so your nonprofit being focused on women must really help with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, we have three types of programs where two out of three of our programs are for girls. Our community programs are open to girls and boys. Our careers programs are open to high school girls, and that focuses on emerging technology and entrepreneurship. And then our alumni club is for girls, and that's really where a lot of that community building and networking and professional development comes in. So it's not as curriculum based, it's more about that connection. And to your point about like robotics being mostly you see boys involved, those moments can, I think, kind of deter a young girl who's finding her way through STEM. We actually did a competition like maybe in 2022. It was called Fly Your Ride, and it was me and it was for middle school students, and we were the only all girls group and only girls of color. And for me, like working in engineering and being one of the few in the room that look like me, I think I'm a little desensitized to like what that reality is. But to the 12-year-old girl who isn't necessarily used to that, them being at that competition was shocking. They were like, we're the only ones that look like us. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that that's something that you have to process and, kind of be cognizant of. So, yes, we definitely started with the intention of like, how do you bring the girl who may not have the background in STEM or knowledge in STEM and inspire her to still, move forward with it while innovating along the way for her to want to be a entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur, a startup founder. So, yeah, we definitely consider like how do we build something designed with them in mind, and then for all other kids, it's like you're welcome to be a part of that process, but the people we're thinking about are the people who we feel like we represent.
What were some challenges you faced early on in building a nonprofit that bridges STEM and business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in a lot of ways, early days were trying to convince people or hope that they could understand why both STEM and business were important. I think even to this day, people are like, "Oh, it's just STEM," but we bring in that entrepreneurial concept to everything we do because, like I said, I want them to think of technology more as like, how do you innovate and develop it, and even leadership aspects of how do you become a tech leader. So I think early on, there was like a lot of pitches that I did with people, and they were just like, "Oh, okay, why don't you just do this?" And I would say like it's great if we have students that do want to work in the aerospace industry or the as an engineer, like that's awesome. But the North Star is really to have more decision makers who can, create opportunities for others. So that's why it's important for us to talk about leadership and entrepreneurship in everything we do because we want them to aspire to like develop and create solutions that can help people like them.
Thank you for sharing that. So your TEDx talk on the Unresume is so powerful. What inspired that idea, and how has it resonated with people in your industry?
Thank you. I honestly I feel like it was a compilation of multiple things. I was a part of a leadership program called Rise San Diego, and that was the first time I was in a leadership program that didn't seem like it was centered around our work titles, and we were learning a lot about the inner work and how like we show up as leaders based on our traumas and our beliefs and what makes us us. And I remember thinking that I wanted to work with people that I connect to this way, regardless of what their title might be. And in a lot of ways, the TEDx talk is deeply inspired by my story to become an engineer. I had a rough college experience and faced a lot of personal adversity. And by the time that I was applying for internships and applying for jobs, I didn't have a lot of information on there, similar to my peers. And I had a mentor ask me about that. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I don't have this on my resume, but I planned 3 funerals and did all these things. Like, it's not what you put on a resume, but it is the things that really made me like who I am and just values in which I want to work with people who have like similar values. So um, a lot of reasons, the leadership program, my life story, but there are so many people I've encountered and students especially that have these stories of like grit and resilience and are able to have transferable skills that makes them show up as a individual that is, has integrity or, has that, I'm going to say like figure out ability and, just willing to go the course or go the distance to be successful or make a solution happen. So sometimes, it's not necessarily the person that has a 4.0. It might be the person that has a 2.5 that actually is a great leader or a great team member or somebody that is really good at figuring things out but had different circumstances to do that.
Oh, and I feel like that's so important in today's day as well because there's so many colleges, companies that look for that, and their students are pushing for that 4.0 GPA, and they all look the same on paper.
Very true. Yeah, and I mean, I think I don't want to over index into GPAs and resumes, but I think also in the age of ChatGPT and AI, I mean, who's to say that the person that has the 4.0 really has the, intellectual prowess that says it's 4.0 more than just have the solutions and the resources to have that type of GPA.
How do you think this concept changes the way we evaluate potential and talent, especially in STEM?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I always think about the concept of both and like both things can be true. I'm not a person that thinks like let's just do away with the resume. I think they, complement each other. I think in STEM, there are definitely like skill sets that are important, especially in engineering. I think like if you're going into, I'm going to say, a testing environment or a designing type of 3D modeling environment, 9 times out of 10 someone who knows how to do 3D modeling, like, they probably will be successful in that role. But that doesn't necessarily show up as a GPA. That's more like, okay, do you know how to do this? I do think skill sets like that are important. However, I think with the Unresume, it kind of gets to the human level of how somebody shows up. I just did a workshop on the Unresume, and what I recommend to the students I was speaking to was look at a company's core values and how what you've done in your life is, representative of that. And everything in life really kind of boils down to like mission, vision, core values. I mean, that's entrepreneurship as well. So when you think about like people's whys or their what they stand for, if I can represent a company's core values, that doesn't necessarily mean like, my resume says I got a 4.0 to do it. So that's a whole different way of evaluating somebody.
How would you encourage someone to be authentic with their story? Say the Walking Dead interview. They're aiming to get hired. They want to say the right things. What do you say to them to encourage them to be authentic with their story, themselves, and their values?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it is a handshake, so to speak, with the interviewer and the person being interviewed, where if the company, values authenticity, or, like they have the type of vibe where they are welcoming and open to those type of conversations, then I think it's good. I think it's good to bring up moments like that where you can, showcase your skills in a more heart centered or human centered way, like the Unresume. But, if it's more of an interview where it's kind of cut and dry, like, tell me about yourself, then I think it could be challenging to bring something like that up, unless maybe there's an opportunity at the end of like, oh yeah, I want to like talk about this too. So, it kind of depends. I wish I had a foolproof answer for it, because the Unresume is still in the stage where I want people on both sides, hiring managers, students, or interviewers, to be able to like understand what it means and like how to utilize it. So I don't have like a straight shot answer for you, but I do know, if someone feels comfortable about sharing their story with someone that they think will honor it, I think they should be honest about it.
Thanks for sharing that. So, how do you see the future of STEM education evolving for underserved communities?
Love this question, and I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I think especially for this year in particular, I think a lot of people are talking about AI like, I don't want to say way too much, but now my 15-year-old nephew is like, Auntie, give me a ChatGPT subscription. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, I think there is going to be a lot of, one, a surge in how students do their work. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative when they are accessing AI tools, but I do think that there is going to be a lot more access, if students want to explore more. I think, one, social media gives us access to discover. We have so many influencers that are showcasing STEM and showcasing their day-to-day jobs, so I think that's awesome. And like I said, with AI, I think there's just more of a way for students to like get answers. But I definitely would like to see more programs, and something that we're working on right now is how do we start doing like prompt engineering, or how can there be more tangible, I'm going to say, work solutions for high schoolers in today's age. Because what I'm hearing and what I'm finding right now with the students I work with, who I've mentored over the years, job market is a little different than when I was growing up. I had a internship at a civil engineering firm when I was 15 or 16, and that was because I did a engineering graphics class my 11th grade year. So I'm curious on what new opportunities can come up for underserved youth in this day and age, because I don't know if companies are as hands-on with high school students, giving them those opportunities. So I'll say GTT is working on solutions to try to bridge that gap, but um, I do recognize like there is more access to information, but it may not always be like the best information all around.
So, what advice would you give for students to use that information wisely, to use that access wisely?
Yeah. Um, so I'm gonna try to take off the AI hat, but I think part of it starts with understanding what you want to learn about, finding programs that can support you. For example, I mentored a student who was interested in aerospace, and at the time we were doing a space program where we had students building prototypes, and they flew an experiment on a microgravity flight. So part of her even knowing about that was connecting with a professional in that field. So I think step one is always like, try to find someone that's doing something similar to you that you resonate with, who might be able to help you on your path. Um, Step two, and you don't have to do it in this order, but I think, like I said, the resources online, if there are any TikTokers or influencers that you look up to that are probably doing STEM, just kind of look at their like day in the life and what's available. I think the more that students can start doing different, using different tools. So like, okay, I have to put the AI hat back on, but learning the logic, learning how to do automations, learning design, learning Adobe, and just all these different like licensed tools that could help them, potentially do an internship somewhere, or just like watch some YouTube videos to try to understand that skill set. I'm a professional. I'm still on YouTube just watching random things like model-based systems engineering. So I say all that to say, like, the information is abundant, but I think finding a mentor that could kind of lead you in the right way, and then you doing a little bit of that independent work to find like more resources online, is a good approach to start building that muscle of what you want to do.
You've worked at the intersection of engineering, business, and diversity. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about making a lasting impact?
Making a lasting impact. So, I like those intersections, and diversity might just be because I'm diverse. I don't know. But I think I use the word reimagine often, and to me, that means how do we recreate or build a solution that works for, this intended use. Um, at Collins, I work in applied research and technology, and it's very much about like technology maturity and development. So you're constantly iterating on a technology or a solution. You go from like, it starts off as a small thing, and then you have to like show that it could perform in like this type of environment and in this type of environment. So I think in the same way, if I apply that to like a GTT program, or a working arrangement for new interns, or just something that requires a lot of conscious thoughts and intention on like, okay, I want the feeling to be like this, and I want the outcome to look like that. For me, it's normally like an iterative approach of like what is working, and then what's potentially an out of the box solution that can really change opportunity for somebody, and put them in a higher light.
Well, thank you so much, Jasmine. Before we wrap this up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience?
In this day and age, I'm gonna say, keep tinkering, keep discovering, keep trying new things. I think it's awesome. Like I remember when I was a design intern at a company in college, um, I knew that I did not want to be a design engineer. So I think the more you can find things you even don't want to do can get you closer to who you really are and what you're really passionate about and what you do want to do. So keep
Well,
trying.
thank you so much, Jasmine. I've really enjoyed this conversation and learned a lot, so thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to our next chat. Thanks again.
Yeah.